What if the person you trusted most abandoned you in your darkest hour, stole your life, and left you for dead? My name is Odell, and just 1 week after my mother vanished from my hospital bed during a stroke, I uncovered a betrayal so twisted it'll leave you speechless. Stick around because the truth I found and the $500 million that changed everything will blow your mind. My name is Odell. I had a stroke on Thanksgiving week, and when I woke up, my mother had vanished. My sister had already signed the power of attorney, my name removed from the house deed, my mind labeled unstable, and now they toast champagne in the house I once owned while telling the world they love me through it. But what if the one they silenced is about to speak louder than they ever imagined? The hospital ceiling was a dull shade of beige, flickering fluorescent lights humming just above my blurred eyes. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of where I was, but the pieces didn't come together right away. The chill in the air, the scratch of the thin blanket against my legs, the antiseptic biting into my nose. None of it felt real. Only when I tried to sit up and pain shot down my left side did I remember something had happened. The last thing I could recall clearly was riding in the car beside my mother. She was silent the entire drive, fingers tapping the steering wheel in perfect rhythm, eyes fixed on the road. Not once did she ask if I was okay, not even when I said I couldn't feel my arm. The ER entrance blurred past as I stumbled in. She parked, helped me inside with one hand on my elbow, and answered the nurse's questions like I wasn't there. "Is she under stress?" the nurse had asked. My mother didn't hesitate. "She's always dramatic when she's tired." That sentence, it still clung to my chest like a bruise. I had tried to explain to say something, but my mouth didn't work anymore, and everything around me tilted sideways, then nothing. Now I was waking up alone in a stiff hospital bed, a beeping monitor. The only sign I was still tethered to this world. I turned slowly, hoping to see her face, but the chair next to the bed was empty. There wasn't even a jacket tossed across it, no purse, no note. A nurse came in mid-30s with tired eyes and a polite smile. "You're awake?" she said gently, checking the IV line. "That's good. You've been out a few hours." I licked my lips. "Where's my mom?" She hesitated. "She left a while ago, said you'd understand." "Understand what?" My voice cracked like dry wood. "She didn't leave any details, but she took your things. Your phone." The nurse's expression told me enough. Gone, too. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. The edges of my memory were starting to return, and they weren't kind. I swung my legs off the bed, determined to find something, anything. The nurse tried to stop me, but I waved her off. My legs were shaky, but I kept moving out into the hallway, past the elevators. My body moved as if on autopilot until I heard something that stopped me cold. She already signed power of attorney, said a woman in scrubs behind the front desk. Said the patients had prior episodes, something about memory instability. My heart stopped. Another voice murmured, "It's already filed." I stepped closer, arms trembling. "Excuse me, did you just say power of attorney?" The nurse glanced up, startled. "That's confidential, I'm sorry." I staggered back a step, reaching for my purse, then froze my wallet, my ID. It wasn't there. I pulled open the tiny cloth bag they'd placed beside my bed. Nothing. Not even a phone charger. They said she'd taken everything. I leaned on the wall for balance, staring at the floor. Something inside me was folding, breaking, and still I couldn't quite cry. It was like my body already knew not to waste the effort. For years I'd made myself small so that peace could live in that house. I let my sister's voice drown mine out. I let my mom call me resilient as an excuse to ignore me. I believed that if I never asked for too much, maybe that was how you got love. But love doesn't walk out while you're unconscious. When I finally made it back to my room, I asked the nurse again, "Are you sure she didn't leave anything for me?" The nurse paused, then shook her head. She said you'd be fine, and she said she had somewhere else to be. My eyes drifted to the window. The sky outside was dark now, rain streaking the glass. A mother's absence shouldn't feel so heavy when you've grown up with it, but somehow it always does. She didn't even wait to know if I'd live, I whispered. And that was the moment something inside me began to burn. But she stayed long enough to sign over my life. That much was clear. Morning light pushed through the blinds in pale strips, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. The hospital was quieter now. Thanksgiving morning. No smell of turkey, no sound of family laughter, just the scent of bleach and the hollow silence that follows a betrayal too sharp to voice. I was still in the same flimsy gown, perched on the edge of the bed. My feet were cold. I'd asked again for my belongings. The nurse on duty, someone new, gave me a hesitant smile and a clipboard. Your mother said you'd ask. She also said you've been confused lately. She noted episodes. I blinked, stunned episodes. The nurse flipped the page as if it weren't personal. It says here, mild disorientation, history of delusional thinking, unreliable memory. Signed by family, dated yesterday. I'm a teacher, I said, voice brittle. I drive, I pay my rent, I file taxes, I don't hallucinate. She nodded but didn't meet my eyes. I turned my head slowly toward the window. A drizzle had begun. Cars passed in the distance. I felt like I was watching from the wrong side of a two-way mirror. Can I speak to someone about my file? We'd need clearance from the listed guardian according to the POA, your mother. Those words landed like a punch. I wasn't sick. I wasn't broken. But my name was already being quietly removed from the systems that proved I existed. An hour passed, then another. That's when Raimi appeared, an intern nurse I hadn't noticed before. He was barely out of school, still had the nervousness of someone trying to do the right thing in a place that punished it. I looked you up in the system, he said in a whisper, slipping into my room while checking a monitor that didn't need checking. What they wrote about you. It's not standard, you're not flagged for psych consult. There's just a note from your mother, it's concerning. My throat was dry, can I see it? He gave a cautious nod. I'll print a copy when I can. Meet me by the vending machines in 10. I waited 9. He came back with a manila folder tucked into a plastic tray and handed it off like he was delivering a snack. Don't open it here. I ducked into the patient restroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the toilet, and peeled open the folder with shaking fingers. At the top of the first page, patient presents signs of cognitive instability. Observation advised. No known allergies. Mental health status questionable. Below it scrolled in neat, cursive, my mother's signature. It felt like the floor under my feet vanished. I closed the folder, hands trembling. This wasn't just neglect. This was intentional. This was premeditated, and she had succeeded. I made my way back into the hall. The fluorescent light suddenly too bright. I asked to borrow a hospital phone, called my school's front desk. A substitute had been arranged under my name. Medical leave without a single form I had signed. Then I dialed my credit card company. They greeted me politely until I asked about a recent charge and was met with silence. Your account has been frozen by Guardian Authority, the rep finally said. We'll need confirmation from the power of attorney on file. I didn't know what to say. The words caught in my throat. I wasn't hospitalized. I was neutralized. I hung up and found a quiet corner in the family lounge. There was an old iPad left charging there. Raimi's. Maybe I logged into my email, typed my landlord's name, wrote a desperate note, no reply. I called my sister next, straight to voicemail. Then I tried Vera, my cousin, my maybe savior, straight to voicemail too, so I left a message, my voice low and calm. You can tell them whatever you want, but I remember everything. It wasn't a threat, just a fact. People forget that quiet doesn't mean stupid. That silence doesn't mean blind. When I got back to my room, Raimi was waiting. He didn't say anything, just placed a small folder on my tray and gave a single nod. There are people you can call, he murmured. My aunt lost everything before someone helped her. People like your mom. They know exactly where the cracks in the system are. I opened the folder slowly. Inside numbers for Adult Protective Services. Financial exploitation units. One attorney who specialized in POA abuse. And tucked at the very bottom, just beneath the final page, folded in half a yellowed, crumpled lottery ticket. It looked old, smudged, barely legible, but the timestamp on it was yesterday's. I didn't even have to pull it out again to remember what it looked like. That yellow slip of paper had already seared itself into my mind, creased in 3 places, the numbers barely legible, in the fluorescent light smudged like it had passed through someone's sweaty palm. One too many times, it didn't look like salvation, it looked like trash. But that's the thing about what people throw away. I sat in the corner of the hospital lounge, tucked behind a fake ficus and a floor lamp with a dying bulb. The night staff were winding down their shifts, voices murmuring from down the hall. Somewhere behind the reception desk, a television buzzed softly, playing reruns of a game show from the early 2000s. I heard someone laugh when a contestant yelled Florida as an answer, which I suppose was funny because the category was U.S. presidents. I unfolded the ticket and stared at it again. "Don't be ridiculous," I muttered under my breath. "People like you don't win things." That voice in my head. My mother's voice had always lived there, comfortably wedged between reason and resignation. I'd grown used to its weight like an old injury that ached before the weather changed. I didn't even realize I was typing until the state lottery site loaded. Each number I entered felt heavier than the last. First one matched, then the second. My breath caught. My hands hovered. 3, 4, 5. I stared at the final number like it owed me an employment. Then match. I blinked, then typed them in again, slower this time. My fingers were damp, slipping slightly on the keys. A chill crawled up the back of my neck as the confirmation screen pulsed to life. Winning jackpot ticket, claimed in state, not redeemed. A half-second later, a nurse entered the lounge to restock towels. I minimized the browser and smiled politely as she passed by, pretending I was watching Jeopardy on mute. My smile stayed on too long. The moment she was gone, I leaned back and stared at the wall. My thoughts louder than the TV, joy didn't come. Not really. What bloomed in me was fear, pure and pressing. Because now, for the first time, I had something they would want. And I knew what people like them did when they wanted something. I printed the confirmation page, folded it twice, and slipped it into the lining of my bra. The ticket itself I carefully wedged under the sole insert of the slip-on sneakers a nurse had loaned me. The hospital had taken my real shoes, something about suicide precautions. The irony wasn't lost on me. Outside the lounge windows, snow had begun to fall, fat, slow flakes that drifted like ash under the orange glow of the parking lot lamps. It wasn't supposed to snow in late November, not here, not this year. But everything about this week was off, wasn't it? I wasn't allowed to leave the building without a signed discharge. They said it was a mental wellness watch, which was another way of saying, your mother says you might lie. So I found Ramey. He was down the hall helping an elderly man back into bed, his voice low and kind. I waited until he stepped out to grab a chart before pulling him gently aside. "I need to talk to someone," I said quietly. "Someone who doesn't work here." He didn't flinch. "You want a lawyer?" I hesitated, then nodded. His eyes narrowed, but not in suspicion, in solidarity. "Wait here 15 minutes, I'll text someone." While he was gone, I sat back in the same chair and folded my hands in my lap. The television had switched to static. No one changed the channel. Eventually, Ramey returned with a scribbled name on a hospital prescription pad. "Alston Wells," he said. "Used to help my aunt after some stuff. He doesn't flinch easily. Will he meet me?" I asked. Ramey nodded. Outside the fence line, 6:30 a.m. shift change, east side of the building. He'll be in a blue truck. I reached out to take the paper, our fingers brushing. Why are you helping me? His answer came without hesitation. Because you remind me of someone they tried to erase once she fought back. So will you? That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay back on the stiff cot in my room, fully clothed shoes on, jacket zipped. My heart thudded steady but hard beneath the confirmation paper pressed against my skin. She'd signed papers declaring me unstable. She'd walked away from me as I lay unconscious. She thought she'd buried me with legal ink in a hospital gown, but I had something she didn't know about, something she'd never be able to sign away. She erased me, but I was about to rewrite everything. I stood in the shadow of the automatic hospital doors for a moment longer than I needed to, just long enough to feel the cold air push against my cheeks, just long enough for my heart to whisper, "Go." The hoodie Rami had left me was too big. The sleeves swallowed my fingers. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as I walked past the nurse's station. No one looked up. No clipboard slammed down. No orderlies chased after me. That was the most damning part. The ease of it all. No alarms. No one stopped the girl they claimed was delusional because deep down they never thought I'd have the nerve to leave. The wind hit sharp the second I stepped out into the pre-dawn chill. The sky was that colorless gray that always made Ohio mornings feel like limbo. I clutched the folder tighter under my arm, and for the first time in days, I walked with a purpose, not handed to me by someone else. The diner was 5 blocks away. The walk was quiet, broken only by the soft crunch of early snow under cheap hospital soles. I avoided eye contact with the few early commuters and kept my hood up. In another world, I could have been a teacher grabbing a coffee before the bell. In this one, I was walking out of a war zone with battle plans tucked into my bra and a stolen identity in my future. Alston was already there, seated in the back corner booth like he'd lived there his whole life. His eyes flicked up from a yellow legal pad and scanned me once. No judgment, just calculation. I slid into the booth across from him and didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out the printed confirmation slip and set it between us. He studied it briefly, then folded it in half and slid it into his briefcase. So he said calmly, "You want to stay hidden. I can help with that, but you need to know what they've already tried to do." He reached into a leather file pouch and laid a manila envelope on the table. He didn't open it, just pushed it toward me like it might bite. Inside were copies of a petition filed just days ago, Franklin County. My name all over it, though not the name I knew. The legal language was cold, sterile, clinical petition to appoint long-term financial conservatorship over Odell Marin. Attached to it was a psychiatric assessment signed by a doctor I recognized from childhood. Only he'd died in a boating accident 3 years ago. The document was backdated. She didn't just want control, Alston said quietly. She wanted the version of you that couldn't legally object. My stomach nodded. They tried to pre-write the script, I murmured, where I'm the mute girl in the corner babbling about conspiracies until I get locked away. Alston didn't reply. He didn't have to. The weight of the truth was doing all the talking. Then came the plan, a new name, a blind trust, a temporary place to stay, 3 towns over, no digital trace. I'd become someone else at least for a while. You have 3 days, Alston said. After that, if Vera or your mother catches wind that you're not where they think you are, they'll escalate. Power of attorney has a clause for emergency mental detention. Convenient, I said dryly, isn't it? We left the diner before the breakfast rush. Outside, the snow had picked up, but it was still light, more of a whisper than a storm. I tossed my old debit card in the trash can outside the door, watched it disappear under a pile of used napkins. Walking away from that diner felt like stepping through a door I couldn't unopen. Halfway down the block, I paused, pulled my phone. Ramie's old burner from my hoodie pocket and played the last voicemail I'd gotten from Vera, the one she left after the ER. "Don't do anything reckless, honey," her voice said in that sing-song superiority she always wore like a silk scarf. "You're not in your right mind. Just let Mom handle it. You're scaring everyone." I hit. Pause, then whispered softly but clearly, "Maybe not, but I'm finally in my own mind." The cabin door creaked shut behind me with a kind of finality I hadn't expected. Alston's car disappeared beyond the ridge, swallowed by a curtain of slow-drifting fog that blurred the gravel road behind it. I stood on the front step a while, just listening to the quiet. No monitors beeping, no footsteps echoing from sterile hallways, no one whispering about me from behind a clipboard, just the wind and the faint crackle of frozen leaves under my shoes. The place was plain a one-bedroom cabin with creaky floorboards and no mirrors. The heat was stubborn, coming on only when I tapped the old thermostat twice. There were no clocks, no photos. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon dust and old pine, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and maybe never gave answers. I set the legal folder down on the table, folded my hoodie tighter, and sat in silence. It wasn't luxury, it was silence. And for once, that was enough. The next few hours bled together. I boiled water for tea and poured it into a chipped mug. I organized my clothes into drawers that hadn't seen a sock in months. I stacked papers into neat piles, something to keep my hands busy while my mind reeled. That's when I saw it, a manila envelope tucked between two shirts at the bottom of the duffel. It wasn't mine. It had no name. Just the word legal personal scrolled in my father's familiar handwriting. I sat frozen. That bag had been zipped shut since I left the hospital. I peeled it open, half expecting nothing, but inside were ghosts made of paper. His original will dated 5 years ago, where I was listed as the primary heir. Then another document, a house deed, updated my name, gone erased, like it had never existed on that property. And then a final page, an amendment unfinished, unsigned. My father had been planning to revisit the distribution maybe to set things right, but he died before it could happen. My fingers trembled. The edges of the pages curled as I read them over and over. I thought back to Vera once saying, "Dad didn't trust you with real estate, said you were always too sentimental," and Mom brushing it off with a casual, "We're family." Paper means nothing, but paper meant everything when your name was the one missing from it. I stepped outside. The air was colder now, the sky a soft gray dome over the mountains. I needed air, but the oxygen didn't fill the spaces that had just emptied inside me. Back inside, I reached for the emergency satellite phone Alston had left. My fingers hovered over the keypad. I typed my own name into the search bar. Nothing. No reports, no alerts, not even a news mention. They didn't file a missing person report because you don't file one for ghosts. They knew where I was the whole time. They just didn't expect me to come back. As I returned to the kitchen table, I noticed something else in the envelope. A scanned form printed months ago, a power of attorney form signed by me. Except it wasn't my signature. And the date. 2 weeks before the stroke. That was the same week I'd had my annual physical clean vitals. No red flags, no signs of cognitive decline. I had been fine. I sat in the wooden chair for a long time, tracing the loop of the forged O in my name. Whoever signed it didn't even bother matching my handwriting. I stared at the page until the words blurred. She didn't wait for me to fall. She pushed. I woke to the kind of silence you only hear when the world forgets you're in it. The cabin was dark, but not cold, just hollow. The way houses feel before people fill them with voices and coffee cups and arguments. I sat up slowly, the stiff wool blanket sliding down my arms. A faint light glowed from the small desk lamp I'd left on my new workstation. Beside it, the laptop Alston sent, locked with a 2-factor key. The legal folder still sat where I left it last night, like a loaded weapon no one knew I held. I'd slept in a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, borrowed from the clinic's storage before I left Ohio. Even now, alone in a secure cabin in rural Tennessee, I didn't trust undressing too much. Safety for me wasn't warmth, it was readiness. I shuffled to the desk and clicked open the laptop. I opened the encrypted folder Ramey had routed through Alston just hours after we confirmed my ID was no longer mine. A map of edited documents spread before me like rot beneath the wallpaper. The first file was a hospital patient record, diagnosis, early onset delusional disorder, date logged 4 months before the stroke, not signed by any attending physician. Instead, the entry was flagged as submitted under a staff account linked to an IP address outside hospital grounds. I traced it through the VPN reroute to one residential address, Vera's. I didn't cry. Not this time. That was long gone. Instead, I whispered to no one. They wanted silence, so that's what I'll use. I reached for a notepad, drew a basic timeline, dates, names, IP logs. At the center, I wrote ER visit and circled it. Above that, I pinned Rami's note. She came in before the stroke brought docs to add to your file. That matched the second twist, a fake psychiatric evaluation uploaded using an internal portal account. The signature, Dr. L. Kendricks. But Kendricks had died 3 years ago. Cancer. I remembered sending flowers. Vera had signed the card for both of us. I leaned back, exhaling slow and shallow. I wasn't just erased. I was remade into someone untrustworthy, someone unstable, a character in their drama, not the author of my own life. The laptop pinged softly. A message from Alston. They're quiet. No public moves, no legal follow-ups. That means they're waiting, watching. I didn't reply. I saved the files again on a separate flash drive. Then I started filming. The camera was old webcam quality at best, but it didn't need to be pretty, just legal. I looked straight into the lens and spoke calmly. No theatrics, no sobbing, just the facts. My name is Odell. I am of sound mind and body. I am recording this to document unauthorized changes to my medical records made without my knowledge. These include: I continued listing each falsified log, screenshotting the pages and holding them to the camera. I did 3 takes, one with the flash drive in hand, one without. By the time I finished, my throat was dry, but my pulse was steady. I wasn't unraveling, I was documenting. There's a difference. A few hours later, a small ping came from the emergency satellite phone Alston left me. It was Ramey. He didn't call. He wrote, "She was at the nurse's desk the day before. Didn't ask about your condition. Asked what form she could sign on your behalf. Told them she always gets dramatic when she's overwhelmed. I didn't think much. Then I do. Now." He attached a voice memo. I clicked play. A low hiss, then Vera's unmistakable voice. "Once she's in, they'll believe anything I write. Just make sure the file's updated before shift change." I stared at the wall she'd known before the stroke. She was preparing it like a stage, framing me before I even collapsed. Not just erasing my voice, replacing it. I spent the rest of the day assembling what I called my war chest. Organized folders, printed backups, annotated screenshots. By dusk, I had a binder with laminated dividers labeled medical manipulation, property fraud, identity theft, witness affidavit. Under witness affidavit, I stapled Ramey's typed statement with a handwritten note I saw her. She was calm, like she'd done it before. That night, I packed everything into a locked briefcase Alston had couriered from Nashville. With a final keystroke, I uploaded a secured zip of the entire case to a digital vault linked to an anonymous legal drop server. The file name OD23R reinstatement. Alston would know what to do if anything happened. Before heading to bed, I stood by the window. Outside, snowflakes drifted against the mountain fog like ashes falling from a quiet fire. They wrote me off like I was done, but I was just getting started. I didn't need to be in Columbus to feel the weight of that chandelier. It flickered in the background of the fundraiser livestream. My mother's favorite piece, the one I used to help polish before family holidays, when I was still someone with a name, a room, a place at the table. Now it hung over a room full of strangers glittering above champagne flutes and forced sympathy. The camera panned across the crowd, laughter sequins, candlelight on glass. Then the mic crackled. Vera stood in the center of it, all clutching a velvet folder like it contained scripture. She was dressed in soft beige, the color people choose when they want to seem delicate. Her voice came through clear on the live stream. "Mental health is deeply personal to me," she said, letting her voice tremble slightly. "My sister, my baby sister, has been through so much. It's why I started the Serenity Fund, to honor her struggle to fight for women like her." She paused, letting her bottom lip quiver just long enough for effect. "We're doing our best to love her through it." Applause erupted. People actually clinked their glasses. A man in a navy suit leaned over to squeeze her shoulder. Someone dabbed at their eye in the corner of the frame. I set my tea down before I shattered the mug in my hands. That wasn't a fundraiser. That was a funeral for my name, a eulogy. Vera delivered while I was still breathing. That table, I whispered, staring at the screen, used to hold our holiday pies. Now it holds lies. Alston had warned me she might use my silence to her advantage, but I didn't think she'd build a brand on it. I leaned back in the cabin's worn leather chair. Snow blanketed the Tennessee hills outside. Cold seeped through the window panes. The air felt tight like the silence before a storm. But this time, I wasn't going to wait it out. Alston had prepared the packets 2 days earlier, brown envelopes with no return address. Inside copies of the real medical logs, the document trails of asset transfers, timestamps proving Vera's digital fingerprints all over my life's eraser. Ramey's affidavit was the final piece. A quiet man's voice finally speaking loud enough to tip the scale. The first envelope landed at the Columbus Dispatch's downtown desk, the second at an independent news outlet with a history of breaking local corruption stories. Nothing would go viral overnight, but the fuse was lit. Later that night, Alston forwarded me a voicemail from Vera. She'd called the number we'd routed through his burner phone. "If you pull anything," she hissed into the recording, "I'll make sure you never see sunlight again. You don't want war with me. Stay where you are, be grateful for what you were given." I played it 3 times. Then I pressed pause. Not on the phone, but on the part of myself that ever wanted to explain anything to her again. "You already started it." "Vera," I murmured. "I just never picked up the sword until now." The next morning, while the house across state lines was still basking in the afterglow of toasts and fabricated nobility, I sat cross-legged in front of my burner laptop. My fingers trembled over the keys, not from fear, but from focus. I finalized a scheduled email that Alston would control from his side. Subject line: "I was never crazy, just silenced." Inside, I uploaded a 10-minute video recorded the night before with my face framed tight in the shot. No makeup, no theatrics, just my eyes steady and unblinking. In the video, I said, "My name is Odell. I'm 33. I was declared mentally unfit without any medical evidence. My mother and sister conspired to steal my legal identity, my finances, and my place in this world. But I am not broken. I am watching." I ended it with a warning, not a threat. "And if anything happens to me, you'll know who to ask first." Alston double-encrypted the folder. It would only send if I missed 3 consecutive check-ins over 48 hours. I didn't plan to miss any. I spent the afternoon organizing notes folders, voice recordings labeled and cross-referenced. Every step I took now wasn't about emotion, it was about positioning. They used to call me the quiet one. They thought that made me weak, but silence is an absence. Silence is memory. Silence is a chamber that holds every word, every betrayal, and every name that thought it would never be repeated. They thought I was finished. I wasn't even close. The morning sun filtered through the fog like it was trying to decide whether to break through or back away. I stood barefoot on the porch of the cabin, clutching a chipped mug of black coffee. The air bit at my skin, but I barely felt it. My breath fogged the air in soft bursts. On the table behind me, my old burner laptop buzzed with a notification. I stepped back inside, nudging the door shut with my hip. The floorboards groaned under me like they too had lived too long holding secrets. It was Raimi who had given the recording. It was Alston who had made sure it reached the right inboxes. Now it was real. The local news outlet from Columbus, WLCN 8, had posted a 3-minute segment. It was muted when I opened it, but even before I clicked play, I saw the caption burned across the screen. Guardianship questioned legal concerns raised in Vera Talbot charity launch. I sat down slowly. The anchor's voice was calm, clipped. Concerns are mounting tonight about the legal process that allowed a prominent Ohio woman to assume financial guardianship over her sister now believed to be in hiding. My hands were steady now. Finally, even as the video showed blurred documents, even as Rami's testimony played with a pixelated silhouette, even as Vera's face flashed briefly from the gala footage, they were steady. "My name didn't need to be said," I murmured. The truth said it loud enough. The clip ended. I refreshed the page. Dozens of comments below, then hundreds. "This smells like financial abuse. She built a foundation in her sister's name without her consent. Where's the sister? Why hasn't anyone looked for her?" I scrolled until I saw it. A tweet reposted under the story. Sometimes the silence don't scream. They build proof. I didn't know the user, but I clicked on the profile picture just to see. It was a teacher in Kentucky, someone I'd never met, and still they heard me. Across the screen, a new headline popped up. WLCN had released a follow-up teasing exclusive records provided by a former hospital staffer. I clicked again. It was Vera on a national morning show, now sitting in full makeup, the lighting sharp, every hair frozen in place. She smiled tightly, then launched into her practiced tone. "I've always believed in advocating for families affected by mental health struggles. My sister. Well, we've done what we can. I created this foundation out of love." The host raised a brow. "There have been some questions regarding legal documentation. Did your sister sign off on any of this?" Vera blinked. "Odell has difficulty understanding legal nuance. She's not capable of full consent." The video paused itself from buffering. My screen caught her frozen mid-sentence mouth, slightly parted, eyes hard despite her softened voice. I switched tabs and pulled up the video Alston had scheduled to go live. It was short 3 minutes, no music, just me sitting in the same hoodie I'd worn for days with the cabin wall behind me. I looked directly into the camera. Reality is all I've ever had, and it's time it spoke for me. I didn't blink once in that video. I just told the truth the way it happened, not for pity, not for revenge, for record. An hour later, my inbox dinged. Alston. His message was brief. Subject, they opened the case. Body DOJ is officially reviewing the guardianship and financial control. I stared at the screen. I didn't smile, I didn't cry, I just whispered, "Good." Then this time they'll listen, and I shut the laptop. By the time I stepped into the Franklin County Courthouse, snow clung to the edges of my blazer like a quiet crown. The marble floor echoed beneath my feet. I wasn't escorted in. I wasn't carried. I wasn't hiding behind anyone. I walked in alone, upright and unafraid. The same judge who once signed over my autonomy with a single pen stroke now presided from the bench gavel resting at his side. His face was unreadable, but his eyes narrowed the second he spotted Vera seated at the defendant's table. She didn't look like someone who had won. She looked like someone clinging to a version of herself that no longer fit. Her hair was perfectly sprayed into place, but her hands resting on a thick folder trembled just enough to betray her. Case number 84-321 CV. Odell Talbot versus Vera Talbot. The clerk called my name didn't. It sting this time, it landed like a stone on concrete, solid and real. The opening arguments blurred into the background as my mind focused on the single manila folder I carried. It contained my testimony, the evidence Alston and I had compiled, and the voicemail that changed everything. When I was asked to take the stand, I didn't hesitate. I was told I was confused. I began voice level, that I was emotional, that I wasn't capable of understanding what was being done to me. And for a while, I believed them. I looked over at Vera. But confusion doesn't falsify signatures, emotion doesn't log into hospital systems and alter files, and grief doesn't steal inheritances. It just sits with you quietly, while others walk away with the silver. Alston handed me the evidence binder. I flipped it open and displayed power of attorney granted under forged conditions. Property deeds showing my name removed 2 weeks before my stroke. Audio of Vera instructing hospital staff behind closed doors. The threat she left on a voicemail, the one that ended with, "You don't want war with me." When that last clip played through the courtroom speakers, no one blinked. Even the judge leaned forward. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," I said into the mic. "I came to reclaim the name they buried. I came to make sure no one else disappears the way I was made to disappear." The judge called a recess. Outside, Vera's attorneys flanked her in a swirl of paper and whispered strategy. Her gaze never met mine. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe the sight of me standing there composed alive, undeniable, was worse than any verdict. When the ruling came down, the silence was heavier than the snow. The guardianship was declared void. Vera was fined and referred for federal investigation. My name, my legal rights, my accounts restored. Her charitable foundation, frozen pending audit. The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no dramatic cheer, just the sound of my heels clicking as I walked out. A rhythm no longer swallowed by hospital floors or legal corridors. A sound that said, "I'm here." Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones in hand. I gave them one sentence: I didn't come to punish. I came to reclaim what they buried. And then I left. It was late by the time I made it back to the cabin in Tennessee. The fireplace crackled softly, and the old plaid throw I had used for weeks still lay folded on the armchair. I slipped off my coat and sat in the silence I once feared. A knock came gently at the door. A young woman from the local shelter stood there holding a folder. "Miss Talbot, we were wondering, would you speak at our Elder Justice Summit?" I nodded. "Of course, that's why I'm still here." She smiled and left me with the flyer. I turned to the shelf and picked up the torn birthday card I'd salvaged from the hospital trash bin. Taped together, now not as a reminder of pain, but proof that broken things can be whole again. They once called me delusional. Now they call me precedent. Sometimes it's not the courtroom that gives you justice. It's the moment you stop needing their approval to speak your truth. If you've ever been pushed aside, silenced by your own family, or called crazy just for surviving, know this silence doesn't mean surrender, it can be strategy. This isn't just my story, it's a wake-up call for anyone who's ever been silenced by those they trusted most. With $500 million in my hands, I didn't just cut them off. I rebuilt my life on my terms and became a voice for others. If you've ever faced betrayal or fought to reclaim your truth, share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this moved, you hit that subscribe button, because there's more to tell. And I'm just getting started. Let's keep the truth alive together.